How climate change affects. Much attention has been focused on the effects of climate change on forests, farms, freshwater sources, and economy. But what about the ocean? Even with its vast capacity to absorb heat and carbon dioxide, the physical impacts of climate change on the ocean are now very clear and dramatic. According to a 2013 report, temperatures in the shallowest waters rose by more than 0.1 degree Celsius each decade between 1970 and 2010. Here are 5 ways these warmer temperatures are affecting our oceans.
As early as 1990, coral reef expert Tom Manguru pointed out that mass coral bleaching events observed during the 1980s were probably due to the anomalously warm temperatures related to climate change. Mass coral bleaching resulted in the starvation, extreme age, and death of the corals that support the thousands of species that live on coral reefs.
Fish migration. In addition, many fish species have moved toward the poles in response to ocean warming, disrupting fisheries around the world.
Drowning wetlands. Rising sea levels, partly the result of heat absorbed by the oceans. It's also drowning wetlands. Wetlands normally grow vertically fast enough to keep up with sea level rise. But recently, the sea has been rising too fast for wetlands to keep their breast above water. Coral reefs and seagrass meadows are also in danger of drowning since they can only photosynthesize in relatively shallow water.
Ocean acidification. The ocean has absorbed about 30% of the carbon dioxide humans have sent into the atmosphere since the start of the Industrial Revolution. However, this great service, which has substantially slowed global warming, has been accomplished at great cost. The threat in ocean acidification is about 30 times greater than natural variation. An average surface ocean pH, the standard measure of acidity, has dropped by 0.1 units, a highly significant increase in acidity. This is damning many ocean species that use calcium carbonate to form their skeletons and shells. Studies have shown that calcium carbonate formation is disturbed if water becomes too acidic. Ocean acidification also appears to be affecting whole ecosystems, such as coral reef, which depend on the formation of calcium carbonate to build reef structure, which in turn provides homes for reef organisms. A disastrous positive feedback loop. Finally, acidification also appears to be reducing the amount of sulfur flowing out of the ocean into the atmosphere. This reduces reflection of solar radiation back into space, resulting in even more warming. This is the kind of positive feedback loop that could result in runaway climate change, and of course, even more disastrous effects on the ocean.
Oceans are at the brink. For decades, the ocean has been absorbing carbon dioxide dumped into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. It has also absorbed a lot of the extra heat produced by elevated atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. But even the oceans has limits, and we are bumping up against them with damaging consequences for the world. The seas and oceans are heavily affected by climate changes, and we are only beginning to understand the magnitude of these changes.
All marine and aquatic invertebrates and fish are polychotherms, meaning their internal temperature varies directly with that of their environment. This makes them very sensitive to changes in the temperature of their surrounding environment. Temperature increase in the ocean are leading to fish stocks moving north to cooler waters. Example, sea bass from warmer waters are now commonly caught in Scotland and Norway. Fish species up to cold waters are particularly vulnerable to climate warming, as they experience unfavorably high temperatures in their southernmost reaches of their distributions. Fish species seeking cooler waters, swimming through the north, has been called polar water expansion and is one of the most studied consequences of warmer ocean temperatures. Warming may improve growth conditions of aquatic organisms to some extent, but will also favor colonization by invasive species that can threaten the native populations. In addition, new parasites or diseases will arise. Symbiotic relationships among organisms will alter the whole ecosystems will change. In the Mediterranean, the average temperature is rising by 0.5 centigrades each decade, and more intense weather events, like storms and heat waves, are hindering the productivity in agriculture and aquaculture. The Baltic Sea appears to be warming at the rate of 6 to 8 centigrades. One significant consequence of this has been the rise in bacterial diseases like the Vibrio gastrointestinal infections in fish. The acidity of the Atlantic Ocean has increased by 30% since the start of the industrial era and is expected to continue to increase, perhaps to as low as 7.6 by 2100. This affects many marine organisms and particularly the capacity of mollusks to fix calcium in their shells, example mussels and oysters, and corals to grow. Fish are also affected. Acidic water causes desorientation, altered metabolism, and reduced robustness. Unfortunately, it seems that the negative effects caused by either more acidic or warmer water is further enhanced by each other, but studies are still scarce.